Hey, welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to tackle a question that's popping up more and more online, one that really gets to the heart of how we think about our own minds. So, can you be neurodivergent and not autistic? Well, the short answer? Yes, absolutely. But, to really get why, we've got to unpack what these words actually mean and how they all fit together. And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. This comes from a real person, right there on Reddit, who's just trying to make sense of their own experience. It really shows you how tricky all this language can be when you're just trying to figure things out. So let's clear it all up. Okay, before we go any further, we need to make sure we're all speaking the same language, right? So let's quickly break down three super important ideas. All right, first up, neurodiversity. Now, this is the big, overarching concept. Think of it like this. Just like we have biodiversity out in nature, all sorts of different plants and animals, we have neurodiversity in our brains. It's this simple but powerful idea that all our brains are wired differently. And that's not just okay, it's a totally normal and valuable part of being human. There's no one correct way for a brain to operate. Okay, so if neurodiversity is the whole spectrum, then neurotypical is one part of it. It basically describes the most common brain wiring out there, the neural majority, as you see here. And what's wild is when you start to notice how much of our world, our schools, our offices, even just the unspoken rules of how to act in public, is designed with this one type of brain in mind. So, what does that mean for everyone else? Well, if your brain works in a way that's different from that neurotypical standard, you'd be described as neurodivergent. It's that simple. It's not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a different thing. Your brain diverges from the majority. Okay, so now let's use a really helpful visual to make all of this click. Honestly, this is where the answer to that first question, can you be neurodivergent without being autistic, becomes super, super clear. So, I want you to picture a giant umbrella. Neurodivergent isn't one specific thing you're diagnosed with. No, it's the umbrella itself. It's this big, broad category. And what's under that umbrella? Well, a whole bunch of different ways of being. Autism is under there, for sure. But so is ADHD and learning differences like dyslexia. You've got OCD, Tourette syndrome, even things like PTSD. Neurodivergent is the word that covers this whole incredible range of brain wirings. And yeah, it's totally common for people to have more than one, like being both autistic and having ADHD. And look, this isn't just some idea floating around on the internet. It's being recognized more and more in the scientific and medical worlds. This quote right here from the Neurology Journal shows that experts are applying the same framework to a whole bunch of different neurological conditions. It's gaining some serious ground. All right, so we've got our definitions, we've got our umbrella visual. Now we can circle right back to where we started and answer that question plain and simple. So here it is, the key takeaway. It's really simple when you see it laid out like this. All autistic people are neurodivergent. But, and this is the important part, not all neurodivergent people are autistic. It's kind of like how all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares? Neurodivergent is the big category, the umbrella. Autistic is just one of the many things you can find under it. Now, here's another layer to this that's really important. We often think of neurodivergence as something you're just born with. And for conditions like autism and ADHD, that's generally true. We call those innate. But it's not the whole story. Neurodivergence can also be acquired. Things like a traumatic brain injury or PTSD that develops after a really intense experience can actually change the way a brain works and processes the world. So it's a mix of things you can be born with and things that can happen during your life. Okay, so you might be thinking, why does all this terminology matter so much? They're just labels, right? Well, not really, because getting this language right completely changes the entire conversation we have about our brains. What we're seeing is a huge shift in thinking. For a long time, the world operated on what's called the medical model. That's the idea that if your brain works differently, it's a problem in you that needs to be fixed or cured. But this new language is part of a social model, and this model flips the script. It says, hey, maybe the problem isn't the person. Maybe the problem is a society that builds barriers and isn't flexible enough for all kinds of minds. And when you embrace this way of thinking, it's a game changer. Suddenly, a diagnosis isn't a list of deficits. It's a part of your identity. It helps people find their community, find other people who get it. It empowers them to ask for what they need and to see their unique ways of thinking as a strength, not a weakness. It's all about building a more inclusive world. So we'll leave you with this to think about. If we accept that our brains are all naturally different, then the real question isn't how do we fix people to fit the world? It's how do we build a world that celebrates and makes space for every single mind? It's a big question, but it's the one we need to be asking. Thanks so much for joining us.